Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I'm your host, Mike Veerman. I'm here with my friend and trusted producer, Max Kerman. We also have our pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham, and intern Erica is on the dials. We're going to start with the incredibly sad news, as I'm sure anyone listening knows by now, that a helicopter carrying 9 people crashed in Calabasas, California on Sunday, and 2 of those 9 people were Kobe Bryant and his daughter, Gianna. The world has been rocked in many ways by this sad news, obviously. It's one of the biggest news stories in modern entertainment history. It transcends the NBA. I think a lot of people have felt very emotional about this story. We've seen an outpouring of sort of emotion and sadness over the last few days. Whether you were a Kobe fan or whether you were mourning the tragic loss of young lives like his daughter, Gianna, and her teammates Peyton Chester and Alyssa Altabelli, their parents Sarah Chester, John and Carrie Altabelli, one of the coaches Christina Mauser, and the pilot Ara Zobayan, who were all on that helicopter. Today we wanted to get together to talk about this, how we feel about it, how the world is viewing it. But I guess first we just want to start with how everyone heard the news.
Yeah, I was going for a little bite with my friend Erica. We were just like in Liberty Village, and I was ordering a burrito bowl. I'll always remember I was in Fat Bastard Burrito in Liberty Village, and she said, Kobe Bryant just died. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. What do you mean? And a helicopter crash? And I was thinking, I was like, this is very shocking to me for a number of reasons. But the first thing I thought of was I remember like a news article from many years ago saying that Kobe would take a helicopter to practice.
Yeah.
To and from practice every day. And I was like, and I thought to myself at the time, that seems kind of dangerous and maybe a little unnecessary. My idea of helicopters is that they're kind of dangerous to get around in. But then I, of course, became very sad, and just the thought that there's something that is so incredibly mundane for this person. It's like no different than taking out our equivalent of taking out the trash or something like that, mm-hmm. or driving
Uber somewhere.
Yeah, Ubering somewhere, driving the grocery store.
Yeah.
So that act of getting into a helicopter is something that he's done every day, probably for the last 15 years of his life, and that is the way he had to go. And yeah, I didn't really believe it at first. And then the next couple hours were very confusing, too, because there's various reports coming out saying, all 4 of his daughters were on.
People were rushing to be first and not be right, and that's a huge fucking issue with the way that these things get reported. But, yeah, there was a lot of that sort of, like, misinformation that was floating around that, it's like you just – anyway, that's a whole news organization thing that happens when people do that. But
yeah, but it does make me, like, think about other sort of celebrity deaths in that thing where you go, I'll always remember where I was. Yeah. And I remember I was, I must have been, 10 years old, roughly. What year did pass away?
Lady Diana, I think 97? It was 96.
97, okay.
One of those.
So I would have been 11, and I remember being at like a McDonald's on Sunday morning at a baseball tournament. Our like team was in Cambridge, I think it was, and we had like an overnight tournament, and it was like an exciting thing. And I remember going to McDonald's that morning with the team and just seeing all the Toronto Suns that were available in the McDonald's with like the picture of Princess Diana. I think I'm getting that information right. I think it was a Sunday when I would have found out, maybe. But I do remember being in a McDonald's that morning and
like
just
seeing the paper. You weren't aware of it when it was happening in real time.
No. But that's how information traveled back then. But anyway, just sort of. Yeah, one of those moments that you'll never forget.
How'd you find out, Shane?
I was on the computer editing a podcast. Mike Veerman actually was on This Family Tree podcast as a special guest.
I was.
So he was on Saturday night, and I wanted to get it out on Sunday night. And on Sundays, I typically am not on my phone at all. I find it's a lot quicker to edit when you're not constantly distracted with Instagram and everything. So I keep my phone like high up on a shelf so I can't even reach it. But I have this Iverson bobblehead, and it's on my shelf by my phone. So anyway, as I'm editing, sometimes I'm thinking of just weird thoughts. It's like almost like being in the shower when I'm editing the podcast because I can think about other stuff while I'm doing it. It's such a boring edit. And I'm like, Iverson, he would be a good coach, I think. I'm like, actually, I don't know. Not a lot of great players have become coaches. And then I'm trying to think of all the great players who have become coaches. I'm like, is Jordan a coach? And I'm like, no, he's like an owner. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, Kobe, I wonder if he would be a good coach. And then I'm just thinking about the quote, how they say, those who can't do, teach. Yeah. And I'm like, what's the reverse of that? And then I'm going through that. I'm like, those who can do,
cannot teach.
Yeah. And then I was like working that out. But anyway, I'm just having this stupid thought. And then I'm like, I think Kobe is a coach. But I'm just like, it's this repeated thing. So I go to grab my phone and I look up Kobe coach. And then it cuts to this video of him coaching his daughter. Next thing I know, I'm on my phone looking at highlights of Kobe's daughter doing this spin move and scoring a basket.
Come on.
I swear to you.
Wow.
Then
What time was this?
This was at about 1:32.
Wow.
And then
What the fuck?
and then all of a sudden Mike M says Kobe's dead or something.
In our Facebook chat.
We have like
in the Champagne
basketball
Boys group.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, but this has to be true. And I was just like weirded out by the coincidental nature of all this.
That is so weird.
And then I just look it up and it's like Kobe dead. I'm like, oh my God. And I just got totally weirded out. I didn't want to look it up anymore because now I'm like, I'm going to go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. But then Ash messaged and started talking about it. And then my wife, who was taking a nap at the time, because my daughter was also napping, so she likes to nap when my daughter's napping, comes down bawling her eyes out. Like Alex was ruined about it and so upset. And then I give her a hug and calm her down and everything. And then she goes away and starts researching all this Kobe stuff. And then my sister calls me, and my sister is so upset about it. Like, Tiff is a huge basketball fan.
Oh, she is? I didn't know that.
Huge,
Okay.
huge. She loves Iverson, loves everything, especially that era.
Yeah.
Obsessed with Jordan, and Kobe was a lot like Jordan. And so talked to my sister about it. Anyway, then get back to the edit and kind of went about my day and tried to just not be distracted by
So you didn't want to think about it.
huge
You're
event.
like, this is too
Well,
much.
I was
right now.
trying to just stay on pace to get the edit done because I know this is going to derail me all week, and I have a very busy week this week. It did probably throw me off about 2.5 hours now that I think about it, because I would be checking in on my phone because it was on my mind, and then I'd go down little Twitter rabbit holes, and then I'd be like, I wonder what Shaq's saying about this.
Yeah.
Check Shaq. I wonder what this person. But yeah, that's how I found out. What about you, Mikey?
Well, let's go to Erica first. How did you find out?
I found out because I'm subscribed to the little like CNN banners that pop up on my laptop. Whenever there's breaking news, you get like the little notification, and that's how I saw it. And it just said like, yeah, Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash, and my jaw honestly dropped, and I just like stood there for a minute or two, and it was weird because I really have no prior opinions about Kobe Bryant. I'm not really I didn't grow up a big basketball fan like you guys. I really don't know that much about him, but like, I don't, maybe just the really tragic nature of it is what kind of like I just like initially felt, I guess. And yeah, I was just honestly shocked. And then a few moments later, yeah, I just started texting.
Were
the pod
you
crew.
more affected by it than you thought, or did it hit you like any other celebrity death?
Yeah, like to be honest, I don't remember too many. Like the last celebrity death that really hit me was probably Tom Petty, and that's probably the only celebrity death really in my lifetime that I've really like felt, I guess. But yeah, I just same thing. I kind of started going through rabbit holes. Like I watched like Stephen A's remarks on it, and then all these other videos just kept coming out. It seems like everybody had like a Kobe Bryant story, and they all seemed very. They all seemed to say the same thing. He was like such a hard worker, very encouraging, people around him and stuff. And it was upsetting to see all these other recognizable people be so upset and so distraught, you know?
Yeah, I was at a family event in Whitby with my in-laws. We went to Whitby, and we were at this like sort of condo and hanging out with all of like Danica's family. And then my brother-in-law Matt came into like a hallway. He comes up to me and he goes, he says, Kobe Bryant's dead. And I went, what? And he goes, yeah, like a helicopter crash. And my brain kind of scrambled. I was like, what, really? Because like the other thing too is it's like I did have my phone on me, but because I was engaging with family, like I felt it buzzing in my back pocket, but I just didn't look at my phone. You know what I mean? So he came out and he told me, and I was like your brain scrambles. I immediately like start looking at my phone. I have texts from different people. You see that, like you kind of go on Twitter. And I was like, oh man. And it was kind of like a big gathering. And so like news slowly started to like go around the room. Like I pulled like Danica aside at some point. I told her, and then the news kind of started to spread around the room. And I knew immediately that this was like a massive, massive deal for a few reasons. Like people were shocked when like Prince died, or when even David Bowie was a little bit sort of sudden, even though it turned out he'd been sick for a while. But we see celebrities die, but it's rare when somebody dies at 41, sort of like just post sort of like the second half of their career. The only thing I could think about comparing it to was kind of, and I wasn't alive for this, but when John Lennon was assassinated, because John Lennon was 40 years old, he had just turned 40, and it's like he'd done all this stuff in his earlier life, right, like Beatles, et cetera, to the 70s, and then this was going to kind of be the second half.
And he was transitioning to this next phase of his life, like Kobe was.
Yeah, and I think you did mention Princess Diana, and I think that is actually a good comp too, because it's like her post royal life was just getting started, and then she sort of gets cut down in her prime, or post prime, or whatever you want to call it, the second sort of half, or the second chapter, the next chapter of their life. So I thought a lot about sort of all of that. You're I kind of throughout the day, you're sort of engaging, you're talking with people, and some people will sort of like have a hushed conversation, but there's a lot of kids around too, and it's like, is the whole day going to be just about this sort of event? But then one of the kids who's like, I don't know, he's probably like 12, he was on his phone nonstop, like giving like TMZ updates and stuff like that. And as the sort of time progressed, at first, like I think Max mentioned, there was misreporting on how many members of his family were in the plane, and he has 4 daughters. And then eventually sort of the awful news that his 13-year-old daughter was in there, and then you found out that there was, teammates and other families in the helicopter. But I was just really kind of, it fucked me up. Like I like had that weird like there's like a feeling in your chest you get when something like some event like that happens, where you're like, how do I process this? How do I feel about this? Like, am I going into sort of like consequential brain? Like, what's the NBA going to do? I knew the Raptors were playing the Spurs at 4 o'clock because I was PVRing the game because I was at a family event, and I like to save those games for when I get home. I was like, are they going to cancel the games? I'm like, I know that DeMar DeRozan's like this. Kobe was his guy, and he's got to play at 4 o'clock. The Raptors, like Norm was a Kobe guy. Like OG was at his camp this summer. Like I started like my brain started going a million miles, and then I just started thinking about, I would get hit with waves of humanity. So like it's like I would have practical thoughts, like oh, this is going to be the biggest news story of the year. That kind of weird part of my brain was doing that. And then I would just get these waves. I would look at my daughter like running around, and I would just get so sad, like about the idea that his family was going to be left without like a father and a husband for his wife. And he's got, like I said, he had 4 daughters, 3, and it's just, I just kept thinking about the implications of the human side, and then there was kind of fighting with the practical side. Then I was like, I kind of wanted to like be on my phone to just sort of like process with everybody collectively. But unlike you, I think Max, you were sort of on your phone over the next couple hours. Like,
yeah, I was distracted for sure.
I kept it away because I was at this event and I wanted to be present. So I kind of was out of it, except for other than just writing. Like I don't know if you guys noticed, but in the group chat for the pod, like I maybe said 2 words just because I was like kind of detached from it all.
Yeah, it's just so sad. It's like, what is there really to discuss other than just sort of reading about his life and the relationship with his daughter and other things he'd been up to in his post-career. But yeah, the other thing about Kobe too is that it's like when you hear Prince passes, you go, oh, I thought he was a healthy guy, but artistic genius sort of. Okay, if there's something else going on, you'd sort of understand. Like Bowie was in his 60s. Okay,
Oh yeah, they were oldish. Like even Michael Jackson was 50, but he felt like it wasn't like a couple years removed from Thriller. Like he was already like they kind of already had their second. Like I know what you're saying.
And the thing about Kobe is just like, to me, Kobe was always like indestructible. Like he's a killer and he will not be killed. That was like always the thing about Kobe. Kobe like put the fear of God into like all of his opponents and to his teammates too. It's like he was a guy that was like, I will fucking kill you. And the idea of anybody killing Kobe seemed ridiculous. And he's the kind of guy that's like, he looked amazing yesterday. Like, you know what I mean? Like he, in his post career, he looked better than he did in his career. You know what I mean? Like he just had he kept himself in such good shape. He was still very active, obviously, as a parent, but he was doing like film and podcast production work. He was running these basketball camps. He was such like a vigorous kind of guy. Yeah. And so when he dies, you're like, what? Like, no, you can't kill Kobe. And of course, a fucking helicopter can. But it's just like I think that was the other thing that was shocking. It was that there's other people who you go, oh, this person liked to dabble in drugs, or this person liked to fucking climb mountains, or do other outdoor sports or something, or like to drive.
Musicians like live hard, so you kind of go, it's part and parcel. And how many musicians have we lost over the years? Whether it's Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, there's just like a ton of musicians that have died.
This is the most disciplined guy. Like you can't imagine anybody. So
it's hard for your brain to process.
Yeah, you're like. And you also think, it's like, how did he even put, he doesn't even seem like the kind of guy that would put himself in a situation where he'd put his life in danger. You know what I mean? So
his vice seemed to be that he was competitive, like Jordan.
Yeah.
And he was probably like trying to beat traffic and everything. He was like probably like, this will waste of time if we're traveling this way. Let's get to the game.
There's a really sad clip that just went up that I saw today, and it's him doing an interview. I don't know, like maybe, I don't know if it's in the last year, but he talked about why he takes helicopters now everywhere. And he basically explained that in order to sort of keep up with his schedule, what would normally take, like where he lives in California to get to the office and all that, would take him like hours. And he was like, I was stuck in traffic. He was, I realized I could take 15 minutes in the helicopter and I could get home in time to pick my girls up from school. He goes, and then so I would be in traffic for 20 minutes with the girls. And my wife would be like, I can just pick up the girls. And he's like, no. Even being in traffic for 20 minutes, that's a conversation I don't get to have because I'm at work all the time. And et cetera. And I'm sure during his playing career, you're probably never really around. So it's just kind of this sad thing that he was saying that basically the reason he now uses helicopter travel was to have more time with his family.
It's efficient.
Yeah. I think there's another element. The reason this is obviously such a big story too is because there's I think currently like 400 and something players in the NBA, right?
Yeah.
And famous people die. It happens, but this guy is like he's a legend in the sport of basketball on the level of a Michael Jordan or LeBron James. Like a lot of people consider Kobe the second best shooting guard of all time. Like just from an NBA perspective, it would be like Wayne Gretzky passing away, or name someone from soccer. I don't know. Or like Tom Brady or
Ronaldo,
something.
yeah.
Exactly. Or Tiger Woods. It's like when somebody of this magnitude goes, it does send an earthquake sort of through sort of our social consciousness and the way that we all mourn. I think another thing that should be discussed is that Kobe has a complicated legacy for many reasons, and a lot of people have brought this up. You see a lot of different sort of people on Twitter say, hey, like, let's not deify a guy that absolutely had a sexual assault charge against him, and it's a part of his story. And I know that when somebody passes away, it feels uncouth to bring up those things. But if we're going to talk about the fact that he was a 5-time champion and he was the best at what he did, or one of the best at all time what he did, you also have to talk about this other thing that's a huge element of his story and maybe made him problematic for some people to root for and could complicate sort of the way that we look at his legacy. I'm fascinated. I mean, again, like we don't have to get into the minutia or details of that because honestly, that's not what we're going to do right now. But we can talk about the way that people talk about Kobe. Have you guys been seeing a lot of sort of like mention of that?
It's interesting because my wife actually didn't know about the Kobe rape case at all, and I'm not in it, but she's in a basketball message board. There's Monday Night Basketball League that sometimes we participate in, and a friend of ours had brought it up. So Alex got news of that on that day because she had never heard of that, so she was now very conflicted. People who normally speak up on things like this, I find aren't, because I'm kind of checking to normal people who speak out on things like this who have kind of remained silent or begrudgingly said something online. I find it very interesting, the people's image that's associated with what they've done. Like if Mike Tyson had died, I think the reaction would have been quite different than Kobe dying. Yeah. I'm so confused myself on how to feel or what to say or what the correct. I look to these people to kind of shape my opinion because that really kind of forms it over time. And a lot of people make good points that I'm not thinking about in the moment, but I start to think about later on. And I'm like, that is the way I would think.
Yeah. And I think, exactly to your point, Shane, it's like, it's okay to not know how to fully feel right now. And I think, letting time pass, thinking about it. And then also, who's to say anybody has to say anything out loud? You can just sit with it for a while, I think, that's the other thing is it's like more so than even Kobe and what Kobe represents. I think what your brain does for a lot of people is you reflect personally. You go, what if I died? What if my daughter died? What if I died with my daughter? What if my wife and daughter died in a car crash? So what it does is it actually becomes more personal than it does about a guy that won 5 champions and whatever his championships and all of this shit that he accomplished. It's like it's almost like you see something like that. It shakes you to your core, mostly because you're thinking about yourself. Yeah. You go, what would, like, life is precious. I'm going to go hug my kid. I'm going to be kinder because, like, this could happen to anybody in a car accident. Yes, it happened to probably one of the 50 most famous people in the entire world, so that makes it noteworthy and it resonates with people. And
listen, like people have visceral ties to Kobe. People in LA,
Yeah.
people that love NBA basketball. Like I've never been a Kobe guy. Like you know. What I
Yeah,
mean?
I was
Like,
trying to think about that because I've never been a Kobe guy either. But I was like, what makes Kobe so unique here in his passing and like the way he's revered in celebrity culture? And it's like we grew up with him, you know, and he grew up when the internet was starting. So he's been a product of the internet his whole career, basically. And he's also obviously a 5-time champion and played with Shaquille O'Neal, one of the other biggest celebrities in the world. But also in LA, he was so tied to celebrity culture and movies and actors and musicians. Like how many name drops in hip hop has Kobe had? Lots, right? Like how many famous friends does he have? Lots. And it's not just because he was a good player and won championships. It was because he was located in that particular space.
you know, you talk about LA, and one of the things that's remarkable is on Tuesday night, last night, we're recording this on a Wednesday, the Lakers and the Clippers were supposed to play, I guess, the first game since Kobe had passed away, and the NBA ended up postponing that game. LeBron James took a couple days, and then he finally sort of said his piece. I think, you know, it was incredibly difficult for him. And I guess the players and the team, the LA Lakers, are still in mourning, so they postponed that game. Mm-hmm. And in lieu of that game, they ended up doing a TNT special from Staples Center. Did anybody see this last night? I saw it with the sound off. The Raptors played the Hawks last night, and so I was watching on TV, but I was with my friend Carl in a bar, so I couldn't hear the sound. But they were throwing to clips of Shaq, and I guess Shaq was talking about Kobe, and I don't know. Apparently, I was talking to Danica this morning, and I guess it was like he went on for 7 minutes, and at some point, Ernie Johnson went to move the segment along and throw to D-Wade or something. And then Shaq's like, I'm not finished. But I didn't hear what he said, but what I saw was just Shaq, who's this big sort of hulking presence, just crying.
Who didn't always get along with Kobe either.
Yeah.
They were bitter enemies for a long time.
Totally.
Even as teammates.
But it was a striking image in a bar. You know, we were just sitting there looking at Shaq, and it was making us emotional watching Shaq cry on TV, even though we couldn't really quite hear what he said. But I guess we didn't see that. Shane, you were at the game last night, and they did a tribute for Kobe off the top.
Yeah, it was about a 3-minute tribute. They played it on TV.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
I thought it was, it was like, they sort of played the whole thing on TV. I thought it was appropriately sort of, you know, I didn't know if it was going to be one of those things where they show a ton of highlights or whatever, but it was just the PA guy or a voiceover guy talking, sort of describing Kobe's accomplishments, and then they did 24 seconds of silence, and they counted it down, and when it hit the 8, they went yellow, and then it went down to 1.
Yeah, and then people did a little bit of a Kobe chant in the stadium.
Yeah.
But I thought it was going to be like Kobe chant for a long time because there were so many Kobe jerseys, but it just lasted for maybe 5 seconds and then kind of.
It's a funny one because it's supposed to be a moment of silence, but you also want to cheer for the guy. It's like
it was after the 24 seconds that they chanted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It still.
Oh
feels,
yeah. The chant was not going on as it was.
No, I get that, but it's but are we supposed to cheer really loudly? I don't know. It's a weird one. I feel like I'm at a loss for what to do a lot, in the last couple of days. As to
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, you mentioned that all of the people that sort of revered Kobe, whether it's celebrities, people that knew him personally, and you've heard so many stories. Jimmy Fallon told that story. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, that was great.
About he met Kobe when Kobe was 17, and they ended up going on a beer run together. They were at a party together, and Jimmy was just in the comedy scene in LA. And
he was 19 at the time.
Yeah, 21. He was 19 and Kobe, or something like that, and Kobe was 17, and then they have to go on a beer run. Anyway, Zach Lowe told a great story about Kobe, inviting him over to watch Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals with the Cavaliers and Raptors. Did you guys hear that story?
Yeah, I've been really going down the deep dive with all the podcasts, and it's been really cool to hear all these journalists that have stories like this. He also called Bill Simmons out of the blue.
Yeah,
Kobe would do this thing where he basically was a very curious person, and he wanted to know how the greats did their job. He was always in search of how does J.K. Rowling write that book? How does a certain director make that movie? How does Steve Jobs make iPhones? And he just called people up. Or he'd text him yo, it's Kobe, call me. And Bill Simmons has a story about he had just written an article about leadership and how Bill Russell was a great leader, and Kobe just called him up and was like, yo, I want to talk to you about it. And they had a 25-minute phone conversation, and Simmons was like, I think this would make a great article. Can I write an article about you calling me? He said, no, it's off the record, and just hung up the phone. which is great. The outpouring has been really interesting. And one of the first things I thought about was how the city of Los Angeles is going to react, and just driving around LA whenever I'm down there, I'm always really sort of impressed and almost in awe of the mural culture that happens down there, because there's like amazing murals of like Biggie and Nipsey Hussle and anybody else who's passed too soon. And I was talking to Amanda Ash. I was like, oh, the murals are going to be out of control. And sure enough, within 24 hours, there are these massive murals all around LA of like him and his daughter Gianna, and I can only imagine what the funeral is going to be. Like, it's going to be like a stately funeral. Like how many people are possibly going to show up, and how are they going to do it? It's going to be as if someone from the royal family passed away.
We saw this, when Michael Jackson died. They did I think they did the funeral at Staples Center. So like they're going to probably do something like that again. It will be televised, I would imagine, or I guess it will come down to what his family wants. I don't know if there'll be a procession through the streets of LA. They did that with James Brown. I remember. Anyway.
Do we think he's bigger than Jordan?
It's a good question, because
now maybe.
Yeah, if Jordan passed away today tragically, let's walk through that hypothetical for a second. It would be different because Jordan's closer to 60.
He's an older man.
Well, I know. I just meant if Jordan died at 41.
Oh,
it's weird. I feel like Kobe was more loved by people he knew, that he actually knew, than Jordan. Like, I feel like people kind of thought Jordan was a bit of a dick, maybe, who knew him. Like, even listening to Rodman talk about Jordan, they never spoke.
But everybody thought Kobe was a dick. Not everybody. A lot of people thought Kobe was a dick, too, for a lot of his career.
It seems like he changed it post-retirement.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like the last 4 years, he sort of, I've been listening to a lot of sort of podcasts about him and sort of how he changed his demeanor and the way that he approached life. And I think he felt like he missed out on certain camaraderie and friendship and stuff. So I think he tried to, that Zach Lowe story he talks about where Kobe had read an article and liked that Zach went really in depth on like X's and O's. And then he ends up inviting Zach over to watch, like I said, the Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals. And he says he shows up at this, and you should listen to Zach's podcast. It's great, but I'll just sort of quickly sort of tell the story. But he shows up and Kobe doesn't have anybody. Kobe answers the door at his office building. It's like a 2-story little building in California somewhere. And he brings him into a boardroom. And then finally an assistant kind of comes in with a 6-pack of beer. And Kobe's like, "You want to split this with me while we watch the game?" And they both just sat there like sipping beer, watching the game. And Kobe he'd pause it and he'd be like, "You see, like he's like, Kyle Lowry's feet are this way. He's like the offensive player should be attacking him this way." And he said he basically just sat there and watched the game with Kobe. And it's like those types of things. I don't. It would seem from the people that knew him and talked about him, Kobe didn't do that stuff when he was a player. He was much more abrasive or like closed off or like maniacal. And then it was like post playing career, he decided to sort of become more warm and like wanted to share his knowledge with people. And like Max was saying, he would call J.K. Rowling and want to learn about storytelling, or the guy won an Oscar. Like it was like he almost tried to like change the way he approached life post playing career, it would seem.
Yeah, it's like I did not care about him at all when he was alive, but now that he's dead, and I messaged this in our group, it's strange that I care about him so much right now.
And you like him a lot more, you're saying.
Yeah, if I didn't know any better, I would think he was the best man who ever lived. You know what I mean? Like, everything on my Instagram is just a story about how great he was, or it's a clip from his documentary that I had never seen, and him just talking directly to camera, saying all this inspiring shit, or a mural thing of him with like an inspirational quote he said. And it does really like pump you up and make you think like, geez, it is so sad that he's gone.
Yeah, it's an interesting way information gets disseminated, because while he was alive, my perception of Kobe for the most part was like, oh yeah, he's sort of a prickly guy, super competitive, like
awkward,
nothing will get in his way from greatness. But and those are stories that probably came out 15 years ago when he was on the Lakers with Shaq, or Phil Jackson telling a story about dealing with a young Kobe Bryant. And that's how I had remembered him. But then you forget about this, last 5 to 10 years of his life where he always made time for young players. It sounds like sounds like he texts young people encouragement, about like keep going. Like he sounds like he was very, very involved in his family's life. Like he
championed women's basketball. He was a huge advocate for the WNBA.
Yeah. So those stories. If you're Kobe Bryant, you're like, yeah, I've been doing a lot of other kind of positive shit. I know I was kind of a crazy person, and I'm still kind of a crazy person, but I've also been doing some other good things. But I think in the public imagination, it's like you kind of remember more of the times when he wasn't as good of a guy. But I thought the other thing, I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's like talking about sort of like the complicated part of his history, and I've been listening to a lot of these podcasts, and some of them have gotten into the complicated stuff, and some of them haven't really touched it as much. But I really loved the Zach Lowe podcast with Ramona Shelburne and Rachel Nichol, two women that are very respected journalists and have been covering the NBA for a long time, and both knew Kobe well. And I think it was Ramona who said this, and I thought she put it kind of perfectly. She said, it was like Kobe was definitely an imperfect person and definitely made big mistakes, and he definitely had a few major regrets in his life. But what sort of impressed her is his ability to truly change after he made a mistake. And so, after the incident in Colorado, his behavior towards women did dramatically change in her eyes. And after, he had the incident with the referee where he used the homophobic slur. He became a champion. LGBTQ. So, and I was like, that's of course never to excuse any bad behavior, but I think that is sort of a reflection of the character of a person, the way they react after they've done something badly, or unsavory, and she thought that was a redeeming quality in Kobe, that he did want to better himself. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to put it. Yeah, and Jay Adonde was just on Simmons' podcast, and Jay Adonde is a L.A. Guy who's been covering the Lakers for decades at this point. He's a very respected African American journalist, and he was he also teaches a course on journalism. And so it was really interesting for him to talk to Simmons about the conversations he was having with his journalism students and how you ought to approach, people with complicated legacies. And he said something I thought was sort of poignant. He said, I don't think we need to talk about everything at once. I think we can have a conversation about Kobe being a family person. We have a conversation about Kobe being a competitor, and we can have a conversation about Kobe's like complicated off-court stuff. And those conversations all should happen. They just don't all have to happen at once. I was like, so it's just like, do we have to talk about this while this is happening? No, we don't need to. We should at some point get to it. So I just thought that was sort of a good way of putting it in terms of the way we are remembering someone.
It's funny when you look at anyone's Facebook thread, though. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to have the conversation at once. Yeah. And it's so weird. I feel so strange when I look at somebody's Facebook feed. If it's like a woman remembering Kobe in a nice light, I'm like, come on, Karen. I'm like, you're all over everybody who does anything wrong, but now Kobe gets the pass. And then Steve will come in there and be like, but remember 2003? And I'm like, come on, Steve. I'm like, now's not the time. So it's like, I do feel really weird because I'm wanting to see both sides of the argument, but I don't like the hypocrisy of everything really gets to me no matter which side you're on. Yeah, I think there's I think we talk about this sometimes, like on the podcast. Generally, it's like, you know what? A bunch of things can be true at the same time, and it's like how you choose to talk about it is kind of up to you. But being okay with the fact that there are multiple truths kind of running alongside of each other all the time with anything and everything, I think that's just something that we all could probably do a better job of just being okay with. Because well, I'm always either too woke or not woke enough. I'm never on the right side of the fence, ever. You're never in that sweet spot? Yeah, so when people are talking about Kobe, I just nod my head because I don't know what side they're really on. And I'm so scared to offend anyone. And I don't even know what the right side to be on is. I think the right side is exactly what I said. Is that there's a lot of multiple truths happening at once. I know, but I don't want to get in some awkward conversation with somebody ever who I don't even know or some argument. Sure. But from everything I'm seeing, like if I didn't know any better, I would think he was the greatest person. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. It's been a few days, obviously. This is a Wednesday that we're recording on, like I said. It still bums me out. It's definitely, I think I saw Gourmet Spud tweet this, but it's the most shocking celebrity death in my lifetime that I can think of.
Yeah, what else would compare? I'm trying to think.
I mean, we talked a little bit about like Princess Diana.
I was a little young for that.
Yeah, that was like the mid-90s or whatever, 96, 97, I don't know when it was. But it's like, yeah, like this is... and maybe because we're all NBA fans, so it's like It's like for the rest of the world, it's like the news happens on Sunday. It is a massive, massive, massive story. It still is. It remains one. But because we consume the NBA so much, I think a lot of our Twitter follows, a lot of our, we follow the NBA so closely that this story is ever present. Like I wonder if there's portions of the world that have just gone back to like the impeachment or other like world news, the coronavirus, whatever other sort of big things are happening. But because we follow the NBA, we're like hyper aware. Like, oh, they've postponed the Laker Clippers game. They did the tribute last night. They, right now players are actually giving up their numbers, whether it's Kobe wore 2 numbers in his career, 8 and 24, and Terrence Ross, who plays for the Orlando Magic, he swapped his number out. They never let you like change your number mid-season usually. But all these guys that either wear 8 or 24 are sort of personally honoring Kobe by like sort of like unofficially retiring the number. Like Norm Powell for the Raptors wears 24. I think he's giving that number up. He wore it last night, but I think that's the last time he's going to wear it.
And it's cool, some of the jerseys, the old Kobe jerseys, they're switching the 8 to the infinity symbol just on its side. That's such a smart thing to do.
Oh, wow.
It's like, Norm showed up at the game last night wearing a sweater that said Kobe and Gigi forever. And it was the 8 turned sideways, like Shane said. So it's like infinity forever. Wow. So it's like very smart. It's speaking of listening to these pods about Kobe, he was a very, it seems like he always had, he had like a marketing brain. Like he was always thinking this way.
Did you, the banners thing?
Oh my goodness.
Did you know that?
No.
Okay, explain this.
He came up with this saying that it was friends hang sometimes, banners hang forever.
Yeah.
And he thought it was so clever.
That's your saying.
Well, I just say
you didn't make that up.
He's pretty smart. No, banners hang forever has been around forever. But people, I think, had accused Kobe of being like isolated or not. Like you read Shaq's book, and he always talked about how like the guys would go to the clubs, and Kobe was like this sort of teenager that had this single-minded pursuit to be great. So he thought that everybody messing around and like going to strip clubs or whatever, he just didn't get it. He didn't really drink. He didn't do those things. So people would always be like, "Oh, Kobe's kind of weird. He's a bit of a loner. He's kind of he's different. He's a little bit outside." And so he came up with this saying that's like friends hang sometimes, banners hang forever. Like, I can't count on my friends. And then he trademarks it because he thought it was so good. It is tight copy, by the way, right? It's
Great
just like
copy.
3 and 3.
Yeah.
And but he had that one. The Mamba out is like his speech after his last game ever in the NBA. Apparently, like that night, like a couple hours later, he had the T-shirts Mamba out ready to be sold. So it was like
for his own profit.
Yeah, on his own
wow.
website.
Yeah.
So he had written the speech. He's like, I want T-shirts made that says Mamba out, and they're going to go online the second I drop the mic.
Because he knew it'd be iconic.
Yeah.
And it's
That's
like
Was
crazy.
it that iconic though?
Yeah, Mamba out is a
Wow.
thing.
Mamba
Okay,
out.
for sure.
But and they were saying on this pod that he delivered it so authentically that you're like, wow, like that was like, it feels like in the moment, but it's like, no, Kobe knew exactly that's how he was going to end, and then the shirts went on sale.
Yeah, they say he wrote like 90% of his own commercials.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but I did love the tone of that that Zach Lowe podcast with Ramona and Rachel was really good.
I recommend.
I recommend.
highly.
Zach Lowe has a podcast in the latest episode.
Former podcast,
and it was really sweet because they truly were all kind of friends with Kobe. But it kind of gets to this like, really sweet spot of the pod that you do, I think, sometimes when you lose someone you love, where they are kind of laughing about him in a very sweet, loving way, where they're like, Kobe, it's like, he did so much shit to make us roll our eyes. It's like, Kobe, really? You're going to like do something with a rattlesnake now? Oh, Kobe, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, but in a very sweet, affectionate way.
because he wasn't scared to fail.
Yeah.
Like, what made him great is he's like, you can laugh at me, but I'm trying something. Like before he wins the Oscar for, I think, Dear Basketball is a short film, he had this thing called the Muse Cage where it's like he's talking to like a snake puppet that's like a mini mamba or something. Mm-hmm. And it, they basically laugh at it on this podcast. And I remember like NBA sort of like Twitter and whatever making fun of him for that. So it doesn't go. He's like, I don't care, and he moves on to the next thing. He's just like sort of failed.
Well, he met
big.
his wife through being a background dancer in one of his music videos for a rap album.
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
He tried to be a rapper for a bit.
Yeah, he signed to Sony.
Yeah,
And he wrote like rap.
and he wasn't bad at rapping either.
Oh, no?
No, like you'd imagine it to be much more laughable
Huh.
than it ended up being.
Interesting.
You're Shaney. You're a huge Allen Iverson fan. Did you see Allen Iverson's
That was really good.
remembrance of him?
I read his thing on Instagram, but
Yeah.
I haven't been looking at the internet too often, to be honest.
Yeah, he said that thing where it's like it was his first game in LA, Iverson's, and Kobe brings him out for dinner, and then when Kobe drops him
read
off,
that, yeah.
Iverson's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing after the game?" And
Well, Iverson said, "I'm going to the club."
yeah,
What are you doing? Yeah.
And then Kobe goes, "I'm going to the gym." And Iverson's like, that basically sums up, who Kobe was.
Sums up him and me.
But Iverson was pretty amazing because he could go to the club, be hammered all night, and still be amazing the next day.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, isn't that famous press
talking about
conference?
practice.
He was just drunk, right?
No.
No? I thought
His
he was
friend
drunk.
had died. He was really fucked up. Like, if you really deep dive what happened that day, it wasn't about the practice at all.
We're
Like,
talking about. There's a famous clip of him at Allen Iverson at a Sixers practice, and I guess he
Press
was
conference.
and I guess he hadn't shown up to practice, and they were questioning.
Well, he was
him.
late.
He was late, and he says, "We're talking about practice. We're talking about practice. We're talking about practice."
Well, he's like, my friend just died, and we're here talking about practice. But he's like, I'm a 2-time MVP, points leader, all-star, and we're here talking about practice, and my friend's dead. That's what it was about. So people take it out of
That part
context.
gets lost to history.
People think it's just that he's lazy or doesn't want to show up to practice. No, he thought it was inappropriate given the context of where he was at and the timing of it all.
His point too that this is Iverson I'm talking about. His point too though that like, do I not show up and still give you 30 a game? Like it's like why you like he is right.
Well,
like,
and he's
like,
even
I show
saying,
up.
he's like, you think I got this great from not practicing? You think I don't practice? He's like, I practice my ass off. That was his point. But what the takeaway is, that great quote, practice, we talking about practice, like he doesn't practice.
Yeah, like he doesn't
So
care about
he
practice.
hates how it gets misquoted. He loves the being teased about it, but it actually is very wrong. Anyway, that's off the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean there's been a ton of Erica, how have you been sort of like how have you been viewing this Kobe thing? Like you work in sports entertainment as well.
Yeah.
What's the vibe like?
It's pretty somber. Like everyone's super sad, and that's pretty much the only narrative I've heard or seen amongst my coworkers. I work on another podcast, Raptors Unpublished, and
Available where all podcasts are found?
all podcasts.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
we just we have an episode coming out today or tomorrow as well about Kobe, and we did like a little panel discussion with Leo and Bruce.
Bruce Arthur?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, they shared some really great stuff. It was good. Like I feel like now it's like a few days out. You know, people are starting to sort of like pick themselves back up. But yeah, a few of my coworkers, like Akil Augustine, he was like such a Kobe guy. He's like really down and out about it. Yeah, it's just sad.
Yeah,
It's sad to see it.
Yeah, it's a funny one too because it's not like I kind of zero interest in whatever Kobe was going to do for the rest of his life. Like I was interested in him as a basketball player. I don't think there's anything like so it's not like we're going to miss him playing, right? And I don't think I cared if he was going to become a coach. It's just sad that like he died at 41.
I did like that Spotlight show he
Detail.
did and how, the detail.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm always calling it Spotlight.
well,
no wonder no one ever knows what the fuck I'm talking about.
In the opening of the show, there's a spotlight on a basketball, so your brain's probably doing that. Yeah.
But I thought that was very cool, and it was he was awesome at breaking down the game in more than in ways that other great players couldn't do. He could.
Yeah, it's interesting how he said if Kobe were still alive, it's like I wouldn't think about Kobe. Like I don't think Kobe ever really entered my mind. Every once in a while, he would pop up with a show like Detail, or he'd be courtside at a game with his daughter, or one of his daughters, and he's just not part of like what I think about. But now I haven't stopped thinking about Kobe, and I think it's just the sadness of all those people dying. Obviously, like his daughter. One thing that's been sort of I think really touching and appropriate is that like all the murals or a lot of them have been Kobe and his daughter. You know what I mean? Like you see that like a lot of the photos. I think there was like a New York Times or LA Times like sort of like it was a photo of him and his daughter. It's like her on his shoulders, and it's that stuff is just heart wrenching because I've heard this in other places, but like Kobe. His story was largely written, and yes, he got cut down when the second half was going to be written at 41. But like, he had an extraordinary life that literally less than 1% of people sort of get to live. But his daughter and the other young ladies on that helicopter, they don't like it's done for them. At 13, they don't get to like write their story.
The Athletic did sort of a obituary style piece about Gianna. Did you see that? So basically, it didn't really mention Kobe other than like her father was Kobe Bryant, 5-time thing. But then just kind of the whole piece was about who she was as a kid and what she was like and what she dreamed to do. I thought that was kind of a nice touch.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read that.
Shall we carry on?
Yeah. Should you want to move on with sort of topics? Yeah, and then want to get to the Bachelor. What are we at? 10:30?
Do we want to? Does this feel weird to do other topics today?
I think if we didn't talk about The Bachelor right now, it would be weirder.
Okay.
I'm kidding, Max. like,
I'm sorry. I thought you were.
I was like,
everyone
really?
thought I was serious. Oh my goodness.
Oh man.
Okay,
But just goes to show you what people think of me. That I would actually be that way. That's so funny.
Listen, we all have things that move us, and for you, it's The Bachelor.
But it is funny. I did take an Asperger's test recently, and it said I had Asperger's.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So now I'm all obsessed with that.
So you're on the spectrum.
Is that
According
true?
to this
That
test.
makes sense.
So I don't know if I actually am, because sometimes you take these IQ tests and they tell you you're a genius,
Was it, like,
but then it's
online?
like purchase this, and then they're trying to charm you. I am on This Family Tree because I mentioned that because I took the test. I'm going to have an expert examine me to see if I actually am, because I want to see if it's bullshit or not.
Oh,
Shane,
But
you
me
love-
saying that here and you guys all think I'm serious, I'm like, wow, people actually think that'd be something I would actually think.
You love being studied by medical professionals is something.
No, I love getting results. No, if I think I'm balding, I'm like, am I balding, or is it in my head? Is this just a byproduct of being in my 30s and thinking I'm balding? But I did have a lot of hair on my pillow. But I don't know. Like, doesn't everyone want to conclusively know answers?
I don't think a lot of people want answers because they're scared that. Let's say that you did, like, so you thought you're balding, you got tested. If you get the answer that you don't want, people don't want negative news. So, like, they'd almost rather not have it checked because they don't want to hear, yes, you are balding. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe it's because I'm an Aspie, though. I don't know. That's that's the slang term for it, by the way. It's very accepted in the community. So don't worry.
good.
Yeah.
So, we're learning new things about you on this pod all the time.
Yeah.
You are part Jewish.
Yeah, 7%. Which is
7%.
high. Like, I thought it was only 4.
You have super sperm.
Super sperm.
Yeah.
You're on
Might,
the
might have Asperger's.
But every theory I have about anything, I want to see, am I just spouting things that are just lies that I've believed? Like with the sperm, I was very sure. I've
That's
proven
true.
I'm very right. I thought I had thick hair. Turns out I have fine hair. I didn't know. But I always thought if you had fine hair, you were balding. Turns out you can have fine hair and just have a lot of it. I didn't know that.
You're learning so much. And Asperger's is your next thing.
Well, a big thing with people with Asperger's, which is what tipped me off, is that they're not good with directions. They get completely lost no matter where they are, and that's a huge thing of me. And they also get obsessive over weird things,
like
And that's
super sperm.
with super sperm video games. Like I'll be obsessed with NBA Jam for like a month, and then something else.
I'd say in the room, you of the 5 of us that are here,
Mandra Ash is
is here too. You are the most Asperger's-like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong. I have
Yeah.
lots of friends with Asperger's.
You do?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's looking at one right now.
All right. Yeah. Add another one to the pile. But yeah, if anyone does know anything about it and they want to help, I'd love to hear from them.
Yeah, that's another interesting one. Like, what are tests that you guys would like to do on yourselves?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I have a belief that I have a very low IQ. I think I'm very stupid. Like I think, and I'm kind of curious to know.
But
what
which
my
is a
IQ
very smart, because really smart people think things like that, and very dumb. No,
Okay.
very dumb people have this elevated sense of themselves that they have a high IQ.
I know some smart people that think very highly of themselves too. though.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is very common for dumb people to think they're very smart.
Interesting. I think my skills are so soft. I have the softest skills that anything that would be testable, I do very badly.
But
on.
you could be a dumb person or a low IQ person and have a very high artistic intelligence bordering on genius, which you may have.
That's
'Cause
right.
look at the way you write these songs.
Have
They're
you heard
very
of-
good.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
So you could be a musical genius, Max. If anyone knows
I
anything
like what
about
I'm hearing.
So if anyone knows anything about musical genius and they want to, like, we have some sort of psychologist.
Come on in.
Mike, what do you want to know? What do you think you got?
My position is I'm perfectly happy, ignorantly happy right now. It's like I don't want to know anything to rock the boat.
Yeah,
like,
you were annoyed by like the weigh off, like the our weight challenge.
yeah,
You're like,
it's like
fuck
now-
off, I don't care.
It's like now I'm feeling terrible about myself. It's like I wasn't thinking about my weight before that moment. I mean, I always kind of think about it, but then now I know. It's like I suspected I was a little bit over, and now I know. It's like I don't want to live with that. But like I've always been very like when I was a kid, I was like, I never wanted to see a ghost because I'm like, listen, I don't really, I don't believe in like the afterlife. I don't believe in ghosts. I'm like, so if I see one, I have to rearrange my whole belief system. It would be more annoying for me to see a ghost because I'd be like, Jesus, now I actually have to think about this shit, and I just don't want to right now.
So you're telling me if you had the once in a lifetime option to find out if ghosts are real, you would say no? Like you could get the definitive answer.
I wouldn't believe myself. I would think I had some neurological episode.
No, but it's not about you. It's like a person who's actually knowing if ghosts are real.
How do I believe that person?
I don't know.
I
guess they would have to show you a ghost. Yeah.
And then I'm like, is that did you create that apparition? It's too much thinking.
Okay,
so yeah,
you don't want to know shit.
I mean,
Ignorance
important
is
stuff I
bliss,
want to know.
Matrix theory.
Listen, if I felt like something internally was happening, I'd go to a doctor and be like, hey, what's wrong? Let's get this. Let's figure this out now. I wouldn't like suffer in pain to try and avoid that. I feel like important stuff I need to know. Certain things I'm like, I don't really need to know my sperm count.
What about Erica?
Yeah, I don't really know either. I should probably go to therapy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I have some thought processes that worry me.
Yeah. That's not. Belle, let's talk. You should do it.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So good. I'm glad you're thinking about that. You should do it. Go talk to somebody if you're.
I've honestly been putting it off. I have a lot of friends that rave about it. Yeah.
Just stop it.
They've been going to therapy, and your friends say that you should.
Yeah.
Or that they get something out of it.
Does your work cover it?
Mm-hmm. No, I'm on a freelance contract.
But speaking of psychological trauma, have you heard about this Bachelor news?
Well, that's an amazing segue, Shane. Let's jump into it.
This is good.
Yeah. So again, for all you Bachelor people out there,
I figured I don't like to put Bachelor things in the pod group because I know Mike doesn't give a fuck. Erica, you kind of enjoy it.
I'm kind of off
you don't
the
give
bandwagon.
a fuck. But I thought what happened in the last episode was interesting.
It transcended Bachelor Nation.
Yeah,
great
whether
way to
you're
put
into
it.
the show
It's
or
more,
not.
It's an interesting story,
Yeah.
for sure. But as our listeners know, Shane and Max watch the show religiously. They
But
do
I have
enjoy
not
it.
seen this episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have it PVR'd, but don't worry.
Will I ruin it for you if we talk about it?
No, let me know.
Ash, are you a big Bachelor person?
But Ash is an expert on everything pop culture, though she has not actually seen any of it. She reads all the commentary about every movie, every TV show, anything that's been out. She knows all about it, despite
She's
never
Charlize Theron in the movie Long Shot. That's exactly how she's like. She knows everything about.
How was that movie? I've been eyeing it.
It's good.
It's that's the way to describe
it's good.
it.
It's a good fun
Not
movie.
Seems
great
like a
at all.
perfect airplane movie.
Yeah.
Halfway through, you're like, this is kind of weak writing, especially if you consider yourself a comedy writer at all.
Right.
And then at the end, you're like, okay, it's won me over. But Charlize Theron knows everything about Game of Thrones just from reading synopsis. And Seth Rogen's like, yeah, right. And he questions her on it, and she actually knows almost more than him.
That is Ash.
That's how Ash is.
Ash is like, I don't have time to watch a 2.5-hour movie, but I know everything about it.
So The Bachelor. Do you want me to read this?
Yeah, you read it.
All right. So the country singer Chase Rice is not happy with The Bachelor's producers. Eyes looking to the side emoji. So I guess on the show there's this couple, or I guess Peter and Victoria F. Are they in the last rounds or something? There's on a date.
There's still 12, 15 girls left.
Oh, there's still a lot of people.
There's still a lot of girls, but they have a one-on-one date, which is a very intimate date. It's not a group date.
So Victoria F., I guess, used to date Chase Rice, who's this country singer, or went on a few dates with him or whatever. He described it as they spent a night together in Charlotte. And so he's performing a concert. He thinks he's going on The Bachelor. He knows they're filming it, and he's going to... Erica is giggling over
this poor guy.
Hold on, let me set it up.
Keep it. Sorry.
Okay, so basically they're on this one-on-one date. They're having a great time. They go to an amusement park. Pete's flying her around because he's a pilot, so they're in a plane, and he's like, we're going to this concert, and then they come upon this sort of town square area with the stage set up, and there's a bunch of people there because that's what they do. They bring in a bunch of Bachelor fans, and then this guy Chase Rice is his name, a country singer. He's got 1 million Instagram followers. He's up on stage. He's performing songs, and Pete's eyes, Pilot Pete, they light up, and he's so excited, and then they go over to Victoria, and she's looking really stressed out. So then for the next half an hour, they're dancing around together, and everyone's cheering them on. Pete's looking like he's having the time of his life. Pete's also a terrible dancer, but that's kind of cute. And then it's revealed that Victoria has actually dated Chase Rice. So Chase is on stage going, looking at the chick, and like, is that Victoria? And Victoria's like, that's the guy, and who knows, maybe he's singing a song that's written about me. Pete has no fucking clue this is happening. And so the dynamic's really interesting. And then so after the concert, Pilot Pete goes up to Chase and he's like, "Hey, this is great," and he's just like loving Chase, and Chase is like, "You having a good time on your date?" And Pete's like, "Yeah, we're having a great time. She's a great chick." He's like, "Cool, man." And you can see he's a little thrown off by it, and then Victoria has a little moment with Chase being, and they're like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Like, why are you on the show?" And he's like, "I don't know. I don't know. I'm here
I'm
for
Chase
the
Rice,
I'm
man.
Chase
That's
Rice.
what I
Like,
Promoting my single.
so then it begs the question. It's like, how much puppet mastery is happening from the producers of the show? Because in order for that to line up schedule wise, where it's like, because they have a lot of musical performances on the show, but to have Chase Rice show up for the Victoria date. And because also it wasn't a sure bet that Victoria would get a one-on-one. There was 13 other girls
That she would still be on the show at
But is that even a
point.
question?
Yeah.
What do you
though?
mean?
Like, I mean, if there's a girl on the show who's scared of dolphins, they're like, "Your first date, we're going to SeaWorld."
Yeah.
She's like, "No!" And then they'll do like a funny flashback thing. The whole MO of the show is to... They honestly do that with they do funny things like that. They'll do a flashback of like a dolphin doing the noise and stuff like that.
No, but I'm just saying a lot
What happens is
to align.
No, he's promoting 2 singles apparently. Did you read the full article?
yeah.
So it's like what happens is she wins the date.
Yeah.
They literally within 24
She
hours.
didn't win the date. The date is picked at random, so they can actually pick it.
But don't they have like 24 hours? Like they know, like they have 24 hours before they send her on the thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like once they know that she's going to be the one going on the date or whatever, they just contact his people and go, "Hey, do you want to be on The Bachelor to sing a couple songs?" The guy's like, "Yeah, of course." It's a huge show. Like, of course you put that together in 24 hours. You go to this bar and then they.
Yeah, maybe I just was impressed that the timing worked out in the way that it did, because it's like for him to be like available at 24 hours notice, that I think there's some expert scheduling happening. Is all I'm saying.
And these producers are experts at creating drama.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have the drama, the show sucks. It's all predicated on women freaking out.
Yeah, they're kind of sick, these producers. That's why I kind of stopped watching. Everything that happened on that show, I was just like, oh, God, how much did they pay this person? Like, the producers did this. Like, it's sad. Like, remember what happened to Becca with Ari? That was sad. That was really sad to watch.
Cross the line.
Yeah, and it's
What,
just
how Ari pulled the switcheroo?
And they filmed
yeah,
it?
we like broke up with her and they all filmed it and like
But that was to Becca's benefit, because then she became the Bachelorette.
in hindsight, but it's hard to
probably had
watch
to make her the
sometimes.
Bachelorette after everyone
But in
felt so bad
hindsight,
for her.
Becca probably loved it, because now she just gets to sell skinny tea on Instagram for the rest of
But
her
how
life.
humiliating at the time. She's
sure she loves
bawling.
that.
Oh, come on. You don't have to do anything the rest of your life except sell skinny tea and like
The
a
rest of her
Vino skin cream or whatever. That'd be
I love a
amazing.
Vino skin cream, by the way.
See?
It
could be you.
I've never
Mike.
heard of this lady, but I do love a Vino skin cream. Well, what's interesting is to me is when I read this piece that Max sent to the group is the guy's like, yeah, Chase Rice.
Yeah.
Like he's like, I'm real pissed. Like I think it wasn't cool. Blah 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 blah. Like he's mad at like the sort of machinations of reality TV. This guy was on Survivor a few years ago.
He
was?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And have you read who the next Bachelor is now?
Chase Rice.
It's Chase Rice.
It's like he's like I can't stand it. Like he's getting all highfalutin about reality TV. He's like this guy highfalutin.
I like
There's
how
a
you've
common
gotten the
saying.
country vernacular now. Can't stand it.
Chase Rice is getting highfalutin, and it's like he's of this world. Like this is probably how he became.
Exactly. Do you
tipped
think
off
he's
to
putting it
success.
on? Like,
Yeah, and then by the end of the article, he actually does say he's like, well, whatever. I got to promote my single. He's like, actually, I liked it. Like he changed his mind within the body of the article.
that's funny.
There's also a funny thing where, because she's being interviewed off camera kind of as this is all happening, because they pull them aside to do these interviews. And she's like, we dated. That's my ex-boyfriend. This is a nightmare for me. She's like in tears. She doesn't know how she's going to tell Pete. She's like very, very upset. And then they talk to Chase Rice, or I forget if it's a one-on-one interview with Chase Rice or it's the two of them talking. But he's like, well, we spent a night together in Charlotte once.
Yeah.
So then you're like, hold on, were they dating or did they just hook up one night?
They have different views of
what
the relationship.
was.
Yeah.
But is it that, like, is it worth crying over? Like, is it that
No,
traumatic
I mean-
to bump into your ex? Like,
No,
it's
well,
just like awkward.
But in front of a camera crew and this guy you're just starting to date and you get a one-on-one, it could be very overwhelming.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. But the thing is, like, anybody who signs up for that show does not
You
have
have to
any sort of
expect.
like sense of irony or is like sense of fun. Everybody takes themselves
They make sure of it.
very,
yeah.
very seriously. Because if you had any sense of irony or if you had any kind of eye rolliness to your personality, you would not be on the show.
Shane has said in the past that he could easily win one of these shows, or he would love to be on these.
I would love to be on it because it's easy to be popular because you'd be the funniest, most self-aware person
Yeah,
in the
because
world.
no one is self-aware.
Because no
on it.
one is.
Yeah, so she's like freaking out about this whole situation, and I'm just thinking to myself, it's like, why would Pete be mad at you? It's like clearly like you didn't ask your ex-boyfriend to show up and play a song. It's like this is actually something to laugh at. If like, okay, so you leave the concert, you go for dinner, you go. This is fucking really weird and funny, but I used to kind of date that guy. Isn't that crazy? And that's what any one of us would do. But she's just hysterical. She's just like in tears. She's like, I have something really important I need to tell you. I need to be honest with you. Something has happened. And Pete's like, what happened? He's like, I used to date Chase Rice. He's like, Chase? The guy we just saw on stage? And Pete's like, mind is blown. He's like, Chase Rice?
He has 1 million Instagram followers. That's incredible.
Yeah. I'm just like, settle down.
So you have his number? Can we text him right now?
Chase? The guy on stage? I think he literally said that.
It's me, Pete, from the front row. You want to get a beer later?
Me and Chase have been with the same woman? Cool.